Hey guys, welcome to a brand new episode of the Service Without Excuses podcast. We're here on a Sunday afternoon with my friend Trey Raines. Trey owns Raines Restoration, located in Charles, St. Mary's, and Calvert County, or in other words, as he just explained to me, Southern Maryland, everything south of the D.C. Area itself. How are you doing, my friend?
I am doing excellent, Robert. Great to join you on a snowy Sunday here in Maryland. We had our first major snow. We got about 5 inches right now, so it's everyone's kind of freaking out and in panic mode. But I'm just waiting for the calls. You know what I mean?
100%, man. 100%. Now it's coming up this way. We're in New Jersey, and the snow is coming down. I just had to reschedule our entire day for 2 vehicles tomorrow, which was a lot of fun. Try to balance out changing around, but it's a lot simpler than what I used to do. I used to have 40 or 50 stops underneath a calendar, and calling all 40 or 50 people won't even go there. Anyway, we're here today to discuss something more specific. Trey was an employee for another company, and I remember myself many years ago, back in 2005, I made the original jump to go from an employee, which I was for 17 years, to an employer. And of course, like everything, it starts out a little bit slow. It always has its challenges, but there are some differences and similarities. And there are people that are listening to this podcast that are probably going to think at some point in time that maybe, like Trey and like myself, we can do it on our own, that we get to the point. Now, full confession, Trey, I watched your posts when you were working with other companies. I'm like, this dude's on a clock when at some point he's just going to go. It's going to snap and he's going to have his own thing. And you did before I even knew you had your own thing. There was no doubt you were in a breed all of your own. So congratulations on that. Trey, again, went from working with companies to having his own business. And Trey's going to give some of his knowledge and advice from going from one to the other. But what are some of the biggest differences that our listeners would probably need to know about from the get-go between really running somebody else's company, which I believe is what you did, to, your own thing?
Well, first and foremost, I appreciate you having me on, and I think you sold me a little bit larger than I would have sold myself. But yeah, I always tell people, kind of speaking to that the reason why I started my company is I looked around. I discovered a passion for the industry, and I think a lot of us are kind of vagabond type characters. We come from a lot of different walks of life, and we end up landing in this realm of restoration work. And it scratched all my itches. My passion for helping people, getting to use my brain and science. The projects are always changing. I'm a squirrel chaser, so it kind of fit all of that for me. And I attached to it, but I realized that I was working for people who didn't have the same passion. A lot of fire chasers and cut and gut companies, as I like to call them. So I tried to figure out a way where I could find some way to maintain my passion and not, have to continue to go down this route. So I decided, I told my wife one day, I said, look, we're going to have to sacrifice a lot, but if we're going to do this, if I'm going to maintain my career, we're going to have to start our own company. Even when I have dinner with some of my competition, I tell them, hey, if you guys just would have known 3 years ago, maybe you could have hired me and we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. But yeah, so the transition, I think it's the same with any industry. If you're going to go into business for yourself, it's kind of scary. It takes sacrifice. I moved my family from a 3,400 square foot house into a 34-foot triple slide camper on the water in order to get my operation off the road. So we went extremely grassroots, made a lot of sacrifices as a family. I even had my daughter born while we were undergoing this transition as a family. So big shout out to Stephanie and Dylan and Reagan, my family. Without their support, I couldn't have done it. But I think the big word of the day would be sacrifice.
And I think that's the principal thing. You have to be willing to do what it takes to start a business. And I had a little bit of an advantage when I went into business for myself. I had already run a multi-million-dollar a year company. I'd already managed multiple employees up to 100 at one point in time. I'd already dealt with the logistics and operational finesse of that. What I didn't do was start my own business. And that was the biggest shock personally from my standpoint is going, hey, I'll just spend money like a drunken sailor, like the people had, because hell, it's their money. It's not mine. And then when it becomes your money, and I was always told by my last boss, which I have tremendous respect for now, at the time I hated him. But, now you go back and you go, oh, wow, now he was smart. You change your tune when it's your money versus somebody else's. And you change your tune when you have to make decisions that you have to live with, and they ultimately affect you. And like you said, your family, you had to really scale down in order to make it work, but you did. And that's the key. I think sacrifice, I think perseverance, not willing to say, I can't. I don't understand the word I can't. I explain that to people all the time. You got to get that shit out of your vocabulary, because I can't is an answer. As the famous, we talk about almost every podcast, Henry Ford quote, if you think you can or can't, you're right. And I think people
Absolutely.
need to get that into their mindset that they need to do. No. So now that you are on your own, have your own growing business, what would you suggest to somebody just getting into the field and says, I don't know if I want to make that jump or not? And again, it's not for everybody. I have plenty of really good friends that are employed and gainfully employed and love it and don't want any of the craziness, don't want to be ultimately the one responsible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in any of their businesses. Because I don't just work with restoration contracts. I interviewed one the other day that has a restoration contract. He used to be a former partner of mine, but he has a sewer and drain cleaning business. It's still a 24/7 business. It doesn't make a difference in how you're able to do that and run a business, not be the business, so to speak.
Okay. That's kind of a double faceted question there. So I think entrepreneurs are specific types of people, successful entrepreneurs, people who can really just dive in and start a business and can see it through its fruition. If I was going to suggest anything, it would be understanding your why. I keep it very basic. Simon Sinek, Start With Why, is a fantastic book for anybody who hasn't read it. It's definitely, every entrepreneur I know has read it at least a few times and probably moved on to Leaders Eat Last and some of his other works. But if you could see behind me, you see that circle right there. That's the Simon Sinek model. Why, how, and what. Figuring out why you do what you do, why you want to start a business is important. And I think a lot of people try to go backwards in this. They hire consultants after they're doing $1 million of work and they want to get to the 5 million, and they have problems with turnover and they have all issues going on. And they're looking in the rearview mirror, kind of fixing all this stuff. So it's part of the foundation of what we did with our company, and that stems from the reason why I was dissatisfied with the people who I worked with before. They didn't have a why. It was a what. What do you do? Well, we drive structures. We suck water out. We're rug suckers. We're whatever it is that you want to call us. To me, it was a paradigm shift in mentality when I started my business, and I focused a lot of attention in my first 2 years just on the why. Why do we exist? What are we doing? Big shout out to Violin Management Consultants out of Ohio, Canton, Ohio. I attend their business planning summit every year for 3 years now. I attended it before I started my business, and now 2 years into my business. And it always helps me get recentered and refocused, thinking about the core values of what it is I'm doing. So if I was going to give advice, it's kind of a long way around to saying this, but if I'm giving advice to someone who wants to get into this industry and start a business and really start it, literally start with why. Figure out why you want to do that. And it can't be about money. It has to be something bigger than that. Money is the result of our efforts. Figure out that why, figure out your core values, and then move forward with your ideas and your planning. And definitely, it's probably a segue into something else we talk about, but think about systems and processes. That's a
Amen. You're like a psychic here. Yeah, because everything in business is a system. Everything in business is a system. And it's about delegation. It's about outsourcing where you're not doing something the very best at, or that somebody else can do something better. So I know Chuck and Scott up there, they're good people. In fact, Scott recommended me to a client not too long ago. Actually, it's probably about a year or so ago now, but good people. They know the business well. They keep up onto it. They're big time numbers people. And I can relate to that because I always say people lie, numbers don't. Everybody talks like they like this is the way something is, but the number ultimately is the lie detector or justification device to tell you you're either gaining or you're losing. Or the old chunka theory, the chunka coming in has to be more than chunka going out. You have to understand your financials. And if you don't understand what a financial is, you need to learn. And Chuck and Scott are definitely, the entire staff up there in Ohio are awesome. No doubt about that. So yes, my next parlay was, how important do you think systems are in a business? Again, from our perspective, my perspective, marketing is a system. And I want to go back to what you just said before, the why. Most of the time when I talk to somebody, they're always about, we have good equipment, we're available, we're professional, we're clean cut. And all of that is very important. It's very important to have clean trucks and organized detail and organized paperwork and very informative to the customer and clients. But you started with the why, which is, I got to tell you, out of everybody I've just about talked to in the last 2 years, I've not had one person, especially mention Simon, but the why. Why do you do what you do? Why do you get up every day and say, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to accomplish, this is what it is, and then write down a plan of action to execute all of that? How important do you feel systems are in your business? Obviously, now that we segued into it, and what do you think? What systems do you in particular think work best for your company?
Okay, there's a lot of material to cover there. I'll try to truncate some of these answers because you gave me a few questions at the same time.
I tend to do that, man.
We'll start with systems. So yeah, systems are huge. I'm a big fan of a software called Xmind. I was put onto that by Clint Janelle of Job Docs, and his team down there. They use Xmind to help their clients map out their business processes and put them in some sort of a chart or a viewable form. So I kind of got into that and I fell in love with the idea. I'll take what you see, what's written on this behind me, and that's going to get turned into a digital mind map. That's my marketing plan for 2021. So systems and processes for everything, how you take a picture in a room, or how you guys take a pictures on the first day of a job, how you scripts for phone calls. I think all of that stuff is incredibly important. And the more that you can hone down a business into that, that's great. For new and startup businesses, it's probably not the most important thing in the world. A lot of guys get trapped in the weeds, and I'm one of those people. That's why I'm able to say that, because I've been getting sage advice from so many other people who know more than I do. But I tend to be analysis paralysis, and that's one of there's a plus and minus to having systems and processes when you're starting your company. If you're sub $1 million and you got a handful of employees, if you're racking your day sitting in your office, hammering it away at the process for how a guy walks in the house and goes to each corner and takes photos of the room, you probably are wasting your time. You should be doing some business development and getting out there in the market. That being said, the very next step, which is kind of what we're talking about, is what do you do from being a guy in a truck for somebody else, starting your business, and now how do you grow into being a business owner who doesn't own his job, but owns a business that employs others? That's the huge transition, is going from being a guy who owns his job, and we get trapped in it. And I know I got trapped in it a little bit. I feel proud of myself when I started my business originally. And then you start realizing, you know what, I traded one boss for about a million bosses. Pretty much everyone's my boss, and I own my job, but I don't own a company. I'm not acting as a business owner. And that's when I started getting really heavy into education on the business side. I know a lot of us spend so much time in technical education in this industry, but not to plug Beyond again, that's just one of my favorite things. They have 2 events each year that's open for the public, and the other one is the Executive Summit. And you can go into very specific classes on different topics, human resources, finance, just educating myself on how to run a proper business. So that way I can take my why and apply a how and a what and move it down the chain systematically.
That's well said. And yes, I call it the truck mentality. People go often and they start a business, and their why is, I don't want to take orders from somebody else. I don't want to take commands from somebody else. And they say, I don't want to deal with that. And you have to have the ability to take lots of direction, because as you just pointed out, you have lots of bosses now, not just one, and you're the one responding to every single one of them. So that's the nice part. But they have the truck mentality. So if I talk to somebody that's just starting out and says, I want to go on my own, and the first thing is, I got to buy a truck mount, I got to buy extraction equipment, I got to buy dehumidifiers, I got to buy fans. And actually, if they're going to really start out with the technical aspects of it, they should buy meters and understand how to use them before you use any dehumidifiers, because they're all moot points if you don't know how to use the tools that find the water. But they have the mentality of the truck, that they have to have all this stuff. And my focus is to get somebody away from that, because if you want to buy that stuff, you have to have this thing called cash. And cash is what provides everything else, because without cash, you don't have a business. Cash is king, as the term goes. So the first thing is to get out of that truck mentality of, this is all the shit I need in my business, when you really need the other first and foremost. You need to have a system to deliver new opportunities to you from your potential customers and client base. I've always believed in the marketing aspect. When I first started my first business, I didn't know shit about marketing. I mean, nothing about marketing. I knew the technical aspects. I had run a company. I knew the management skills, all the stuff that they teach, even at Violand, about how to run a company. That all I had. I had a great educator, big company I worked for, sent me out to Ohio, different part of Ohio, toward Columbus. And I was out there constantly with new this, new. So I knew human resources, accounting. I had a good education. But what I didn't understand is how to market my business. And that is what absorbed a lot of money in the first place, is getting that, as you said before, grassroots approach to getting out there, using the resources you have in your business, resources you have upstairs, to execute something. And that was the lesson I had to learn, was you have to learn marketing, and you have to learn marketing very, very well. Nobody's buying Trey's water damage company to go out and clean. They're paying for Raines Restoration to go out and do it. It's not the commodity. The commodity is water extraction. They just think you suck water and that's it, and you just give them a little bill and they're done. They have no concept most of the time of insurance companies, unless somebody's educated them. You've educated them. Maybe a agent or adjuster has educated them. A plumbing contractor maybe has educated them a little bit. But ultimately, they just think it's suck and run. Most customers have no concept of what's involved into really getting a structure dry. And it's our job as professionals. I don't do it anymore in my own business because I just don't have time to, but it's our job to educate them on why you should do it right. I just had a strategy call with somebody before, and they're going into the restoration entity, and they're going away from, a different business, and they're going to add it as an additional business. And my big advice was, don't use technical speak. Your customers and clients don't care. They don't care you got all this equipment and you can do all this and you have all this training. They could care less. They don't care. They care that you do the job.
Robert, you're speaking my language, because I think what we're talking about here is culture. Again, that's why I like to hire from the volunteer fire department. All the guys working for me right now all came from the volunteer fire department. There's a reason. They already speak the culture that I have as a business. And I can't speak for all restoration companies. Some of them have different reasons why they exist, and everyone should. But for us, we exist to make our communities better and help people in their time of need. Who's better than a guy who's willing to die on a volunteer basis for someone when they're having a house fire? So I do a lot of pooling in the volunteer fire department, and it has nothing to do with board ups and any of that stuff. And to me, if you hire the right people, if you have the right culture, and you started with the why, and you're focused on that why, and everything that you do and every action you do, every hire you make rings true to those core values and that culture, you're going to end up having that customer experience. And you're kind of touching on onboarding, which to me is the most exciting topic in the world. Customer onboarding is probably the most important process of every action, from the moment you get that phone call, that lead, all the way through the time that you go to billing or collections. And you get it out, you keep it from being in collections if you onboard it properly. So onboarding is something that we could probably spend a couple hours talking about, Robert, because it's a topic that I love.
One of the masters of it is John Don has a class called Strategies for Success. And before I honestly work with anybody that's in this industry, they have to take the freaking class. And I say it because you get 5 days. Chuck is day one. Billy Yaden talks about marketing in another day. And then Steve Taburin talks about the moments of truth throughout the entire, it's intertwined in everything. But the moments of truth are what you have in front of you. How are you handling it? Now, Steve hasn't done restoration work in person in a very long time. However, the core skills are still there. That if that guy decided tomorrow, I want to open up a restoration company, he'd be successful because he understands moments of truth. He understands action. He understands the strategy of carrying from A to Z and all the process that have to be. And it doesn't have to be necessarily checklist. It's a checklist to train, but you have to have your people on board with a mental checklist that goes, okay, bang, 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 bang. Something this has to happen in this order consistently every single time. And another thing about consistency, I want to get your comments on that because it's always an important thing. I always say you can go to McDonald's, and if you expect the best cheeseburger you've ever had in your life, you're going to be sorely disappointed because it's not a great cheeseburger. However, people go to McDonald's every single day to get a cheeseburger because they know the taste. They can taste it in their mouth and in their mind before they actually eat the damn thing, because they have this picture in their head of consistency. It's the same shitty cheeseburger, but it's the same shitty cheeseburger. It doesn't matter. That's my point when I say consistency has to be the same. And probably one of the biggest struggles I see companies have and entrepreneurs have is, I want you to do it this way, but I'm doing it a separate way. And that leads a mixed message to employees when they see the owner or manager saying, okay, clean the trucks at the end of the day, yet their truck looks like a bomb went off in it. I'm just using that as an example. And I feel that that's something that has to be from the top down. I'm almost going military style on that. You have to have that. And I agree with the firemen because I was a big proponent of hiring ex-military because they knew they knew standard operating procedure, SOPs, and they understood mission. They understood following through. They understood those things just like firemen do, just like a lot of police do as well. So what's your big thing on communication top down and having those expectations there? I know I load a lot of questions in there because I always do this in 30 minutes or less. It's damn near impossible not to do a 2-hour podcast. And this is my commitment to keep it lean, so to speak.
I got you. No worries. That's why if you see me looking down, it's because I'm trying to keep up with you a little bit here and make some points. I mean, you talked about a couple things. I think what you're saying is lead by example. If you've read Extreme Leadership and some other books like that, the military is a good example of how to do that. And I would never expect my guys to do anything that I'm not willing to do. That's a positive and a negative because I stay in the truck. I have a hard time pulling myself out of the field to do the things that I probably should be doing at this point in the transition of my business. But I love the field work, and I want my guys to see how much I love the field work because I want to lead by example. And if they have the same mentality that they should have through my hiring process, which is long, they should already at their core want to be doing these types of things for people. And I'm just showing them the example of how they can fulfill what their natural inclination which is to serve. So when they see me, go above and beyond for a client or put the booty stand at something as little as putting the booty stand at the door every day and making sure that everything is cleaned up at the end of the day and swept, and just to the smallest possible task to the largest task, you gotta train that. And that's a culture thing, not to be redundant, but I think you want to have control and constraint, but I also want to leave room for vulnerability. I'm a big Brene Brown fan. She writes a lot of really interesting books on the topic of vulnerability. And I think that the more that you have a trusting environment and you give your people the opportunity to make failures, obviously not failures that are going to affect health and safety of occupants or workers, but give them the opportunities to succeed or fail and give them the opportunity to come back to you with ways to do things better. And that comes from a really trust-centered environment. And that's hard to achieve. I'm still working on that with my team, but I think that's big. You should be hiring people that fulfill things that maybe you can't do, and they can bring new perspective and new ideas to you. So I want to give people the option to fail, give people the option to come to me with some, challenge my beliefs, challenge a way that I say that we can do this. I think that's important to be a little bit flexible, a little bit rigid, a little bit militaristic, but a little bit more like Apple in the way they think about driving their business.
You make up a very valid point. One of the things I used to tell our guys is, I don't care if the task takes 8 hours or 2 hours. You get it done in 2 hours, I'll pay you for 8 hours as long as it's done. But if it's not done, I'm not paying for any of it. So I don't care what your task takes, and I don't want to see something rushed. I want you see, I always say, a big thing is people, well, they're quick. They're not quick. They're efficient. There's a big difference between being efficient at something and using your time correctly and efficiently, or being quick about something. So my whole goal in that was, I don't care. I'll pay you for the day. If you get it done in 2 hours, you get it done in 2 hours. It takes you 10 hours. It's 10 hours. But always complete the task correctly. We don't want to come back to the space. And it teaches them almost an independence to say, okay, I have to use my critical thinking process now to look at it and go, what do I got to do here? I got to think now. What do I got to do in order to get this done correctly? Because if I do it wrong, I've really let the person I'm working for down because I haven't completed the task. And even though I got it done in 3 hours, he gave me 8 hours to do it. And I thought I could do it effectively in 3 hours, and I couldn't. And that really teaches them time management. It really teaches them efficiencies, and it teaches them to take a sense of ownership in the company, or in the company's guide. You have to have, and you know this in reading some of these books, a sense of ownership is important. Even though you don't own the company, it doesn't mean you can't have the ability, especially your lead people, to have that ability to lead. Because again, I know plenty of friends that work for companies and they've risen up the ranks and they're running, $10 million a year company, and that they're very comfortable there. They've said they've put their own little niche into it, and they don't want to start out from scratch again. And that's more than fine. But they've learned through the ranks. They've learned how to do things through accountability, but having that ability to go out and lead and be on their own, so to speak, be their own little micromanagers of themselves, not somebody else having to micromanage them.
No, you hit on a couple points that I like. And I think giving employees a sense of ownership of their task and of their importance is paramount. And one of the two ways that we do it, and the way I kind of look at it, is kind of twofold. So you need to have a stake in the game, and you need to have some sort of a self-serving purpose for that task. You need to have some reason why you're performing it. It's not that I'm laying bricks in ancient Egypt. I'm building a pyramid. And
well
that you're doing the same you're doing the same job, but that's two different mentalities. How do you get your worker to feel like they're building a pyramid, not just laying bricks in the desert in the middle of July? And I think that's not easy to achieve, but it's easy to recognize that that's a problem and think about it. And it kind of touches on why I like millennials. People are always kind of poo-pooing on millennials, and frankly, I'm not on that chain. What I find is that millennials want that second thing. They want the importance of the task. They want to feel like there's something bigger to what they're doing. And if you can give them that, you will get undying loyalty from them. They just need to know that they're doing something bigger than just tapping a machine, punching a clock. Right. So I think there's a lot of potential for human resources people out there to stop crapping on millennials and show them some purpose. Build your culture. It's your job to show someone else why they should work for you and buy into your dream.
I agree.
'Cause that's what people are doing. People are buying into what you believe. So give them something to believe in. Let's step up our culture game and give people something to believe in, and you'll have long-term employees forever.
I agree. If you plant the culture right, it's like planting a seed. You plant the seed correctly for the right tree, it's going to grow. If you don't put the right nutrition, the right stuff there, you can't expect that to go. So I completely agree with you. They are more purpose-driven in particular. And if you give them the right task and you communicate, I think that's the key word, communicate effectively of the task, you will be very surprised at what you hire. And I don't bag on them either. I'm in the same boat with you. We all started out not knowing shit. And you had to grow from there. You had to start somewhere. I remember taking a drying class. It was Chuck DeWald. Okay. Little guy wears red sneakers.
Senior or the third?
Senior. It's senior.
Okay.
The junior is quiet compared to senior. Senior is crazy.
I've only heard. I didn't have the pleasure.
Oh, he's awesome. So I had the class of going to it was at Pittsburgh. It was a restoration drying class, and Chuck was teaching it. And he gets done, he goes through the whole thing, and Jim said some nice words about me, and it was very nice. But he goes, "So what did you get out of that class?" I said, "I left there not knowing shit." He goes, then you left here better than most of the people in the room that all thought they knew something. And I wouldn't let any of them dry my rug that's sitting outside with an extractor next to it, because they all think they know everything. And when you come into this class, you have to come in with an open mind, an open ability to listen, to learn, and to grow from there. And that I will never forget him saying that. You know, I'm 6'2". This is and he's just looking at you going, that's the best attitude you could have. And clearly I knew what I was doing. I was running companies. I knew, but he made me think so much different. Okay, so he was a big grain guy, but I listened to another guy that was relative humidity and it had to be vapor pressure. And I've taken a couple classes from some of the icons in the industry. And you realize they are all the same at the end of the day. They just come at it two different ways. They all are relevant to one another. And that's the same thing with a business, the technical aspects of understanding how to dry something, because it is a science. Anybody believes you're drying, you don't know what you're doing, then you shouldn't do it. It's a science. If you don't understand it, you don't understand psychometry, you shouldn't be doing it. This is and a good company culture like yourselves has this top-down mentality of, I will lead through example. You will grow because of that example, and you will learn to lead through the example, and you'll be the leaders of the future. And then you, as the CEO of your company, will be the one focused on the big stuff. I know when I sold my business in Pennsylvania, I didn't have to do a thing if I didn't want to. I could just sat there in a desk all day and just made phone calls. It looked like I was busy, but I didn't, because the goal was to be on a bigger level. You have to look at the big picture stuff. And often we get inundated with things we can't do that. So I had to have a general manager, an operations manager, an office manager. They all had functions to do in the business that didn't require me to be there day to day. I had to make sure we had the bigger scale stuff, insurance relationships and marketing relationships with larger things, you know, plumbing wholesalers or insurance agents, or doing lunch and learns, as they call it. Whatever it was, it had to be on the bigger scale in order to make that happen. But you had to think about that ability top down in order to train your technicians, your people, to think that same way. So Trey, I am right around the 30-minute mark. That went so fast, man. I want to do another one again. This was awesome. I got to admit, I was looking forward to this. Trey, what are some final words you can give or would like to give? And again, Trey owns Raines Restoration in Southern Maryland. He is a hustler in the best of kind. He's a guy that goes out, gets it, works hard, plays hard, but gets the shit done. And that's key. And that's what I want our listeners to understand, is this is a great example of, in my opinion, what you need to do, because it reminds me of myself a long time ago.
I appreciate the kind words, man. I really do. Nothing but love for you, Robert, and everything you do. I love your podcast. I've been binging it over the weekend. My wife is kind of annoyed with me sitting with my AirPods on the front porch, just listening. So I guess if I had any parting words, I would say, there's a lot of people out there right now who are saying that this industry is divided and there's a lot of division. I would say stay out of the politics. If you're looking to start a business and be involved with this, if you stick to the positive, I could name you off a list of hundreds of people who I'm friends with from one coast to the other coast that I meet at events and I love, and I get great advice. I can call them anytime. I can call these guys in the middle of the night. We have an awesome industry. We're incredibly blessed to have this group of people who care about each other. And yeah, we have our differences. That's because we're strong, opinionated people. I love Clark Brown. I love Whitney Wiseman, Joe Dobbins. I love David Hodge. I love Rachel Adams. I mean, I can go on and on and on about Dave Lush, Jeremy Reitz, Chuck DeWald. We have some really brilliant minds who are out here trying to help us provide education. They'll answer your phone calls. I mean, just be someone who people want to be friends with, and utilize these resources to make yourself better, and be humble. We all have a lot to learn, and not everybody's going to be right all the time. And, I wish the best. If anybody wants to look me up on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, especially, I do a lot of business development on LinkedIn. Look me up. I'd love to talk to you guys. If you have any questions or anything that we talked about that you want to challenge me on it. I'd love that. So,
amen, man.
2 cents.
Awesome, brother. Thank you so much again. You appreciate this nice snowy weather down there. I'm looking out my window of my office going, yeah, we don't see as much here in New Jersey. You probably don't see that much in Southern Maryland that much. You're way more south than I am, but it's weather and it's winter, and God bless it. So,
yep.
Trey, thank you again, my friend. Have a great day. And again, please take Trey up on what he's talking about, and take him up on contacting him with any questions. You will not regret, I promise. Thank you again for listening to a brand new episode of Service Without Excuses with Trey Raines of Raines Restoration in Southern Maryland.
Thank you, Robert.